I'm Jackie Barrie. Today I'm talking to Barnaby Wynter, once the youngest MD of a top 200 ad agency, now disruptive marketer, author of The Brand Bucket, Make Your Marketing Work, and the dean of his own e-learning academy. Hello Barnaby.
Hello Jackie.
So how did you get where you are today?
So how did I get to where I am today? Well, actually I'm 27 years into a career that has been totally focused on helping businesses market themselves the best they can. I've been through a very traditional career. I went to university to study psychology and then did a postgraduate diploma in advertising and also one in marketing, and then I entered into the advertising industry, working for nothing for 3 months and then getting jobs in various agencies. So I've worked in 5 agencies in total before, as you mentioned earlier, joining an agency in 1999, ranked top 200. So I've worked throughout those agencies, very traditional career, junior account exec, account manager, account director, management supervisor, managing director, and that's where I am today.
And now you market yourself as the Brand Bucket Man, and you talk about the Brand Bucket methodology that was created for Saab initially in 1985. So tell us about that.
So what happened is in 1985, Saab were seeking to launch the Saab 900, and they commissioned a piece of research which lasted 18 months to understand how consumers bought motor cars. The outcome of that was a 6-step engagement model, which allowed the agency at the time to map exactly where consumers were in their decision-making process. This was then applied to all Saab marketing at the time. What happened within 2 or 3 years is there were actual measurable results directly attributable to each of these 6 steps. And once these became apparent, it really dawned on everybody who was working on it that actually the shape that it created was a bucket shape. And the brand bucket was born in that way and has been applied then to over 4,000 brands worldwide since.
And that's what I was going to ask next. So in the 30 years between now and then, how does that methodology apply to small and medium businesses that was first developed for a big name like Saab?
Well, marketing's a really rather simple thing. You've got to take your story, your value proposition as we call it, and you've got to engage the ideal prospect to buy your value proposition. Actually, what the Brand Bucket does is it enables people to follow a very distinctive process from being completely unaware to a long-term loyalist, and through 6 steps. Now, actually, if you're a big business, a small business, a medium-sized business, your task is to sell your value proposition to people who are going to buy it from you. So the Brand Bucket has found itself to work for any size business in any sector.
Now, you talk about a value proposition, and lots of people in marketing talk about a unique selling proposition. So what are the differences?
Okay, so a unique selling proposition and or a unique selling point, is often a USP, as it's often banded around, was something that was created when we lived in the era of what marketing. So in other words, what it was that people produced, what it was that they wanted people to buy. Invariably, those people were the unique providers of that particular product or service. So the nature of briefs probably 30 years ago enabled people to say what's unique about us, because we're the only people who make it, is our unique selling point or our unique selling proposition. Actually, over the last 30 years, what's happened is choice has become prevalent. The manufacturing revolution, the digital revolution, technology means that actually there are more than one choice of almost anything you can think of. So the concept of having a unique selling proposition or a unique selling point is utter nonsense in today's market. So the difference between that and a value proposition is what people are buying now is much more set of values associated with a product or a service. And these are captured in the form of a value proposition. So it actually is a series, a combination of a whole multitude of different values, which you or I as buyers would probably buy into as we approach and are engaged by a product or service.
There's another thing that you seem to recommend to every client that you work with, and that's the idea of a brand property, I think you call it. So you've got the bucket for the Brand Bucket, and you also came up with the daffodil for Marie Curie Cancer Care and other such ideas. Why do you recommend that as an approach?
Okay, so we're inspired by the Coca-Cola bottle for this. It is said that the creative brief for the new Coca-Cola bottle in 1915 contained the following words: when designing the new piece of glassware for Coca-Cola, please design a piece of glassware that when smashed is still recognisable as a Coke bottle.
Oh, never heard that before.
Okay, so I often show people pieces of broken Coke bottle and say, what is this? And people immediately say, that's a Coke bottle. Now, if you start to think about that, how clever is that? Because if you apply that to your communication, what we're actually saying is all your communication, when smashed apart, should still work like a broken piece of Coke bottle. It should lead people back to your brand, your product, your service. The ways that we do that is we create what we call brand properties, as you rightly say, which are pieces of design, a style, a look, a feel, a colour, a shape, or whatever, that actually can appear in literally everything you do. So that as people interact with you, they kind of breathe the sense of familiarity with the relationship that they have with your product or service. That allows you to have a real differentiating competitive advantage over your competitors.
And where do you get these creative ideas from?
Now, there's a good question. So the world is a beautiful tableau for creative ideas. I think the trick is to start with a really, really good brief. What you can do, the ideas exist, in my opinion, in the world around us. There's very little originality that goes on. What actually the skill is to create a box that you're forced to think inside. And we call that the creative brief. That invariably contains the value proposition, your ideal profile of your prospect, what you want to say strategically, what your key messages are. Put all those in the box and then spend your time trying to get outside the box. And to do that, you can just take the stimulus of the environment around you and find things that when people see them or touch them or smell them or feel them, actually it reminds them or takes them towards your value proposition. Do you know what? Brand properties are all around us, Jackie.
So tell me about the jelly babies.
The jelly babies. There is a story attached to the jelly babies. So every meeting at the Brand Bucket Company has jelly babies in it. It must be probably 14 or 15 years ago, we decided that we would create an experience that is akin to a really well-run hotel in all our meetings. It included a pad, a pen, jelly babies, a bucket was the outcome of that. And we realised that we needed some kind of suite to put in the middle of the table. So we spent 6 months analysing the most effective suite for meetings. We tried everything. We tried hard-boiled suites. They weren't very good because when you ask people a question, they often were sucking on a sweet at the time and wasn't particularly good. We tried purple violets, I can assure you, were the least favourite.
The Parma violets.
The Parma violets, yes, they absolutely hated those. The sherbet dib-dabs and the sherbet fountains were the messiest of all and actually put people off meetings altogether. And we ended up after 6 months, we had a bit of a competition in the agency that members of staff would try different sweets and then do a little sweet report after the meeting. We ended up after 6 months with 2 sweets, jelly babies and jelly beans. Mm-hmm. They were by far the most popular. Men and women liked them. They always got eaten. And when we found out the price of the jelly beans, we chose jelly babies.
A fine British tradition of jelly babies.
Indeed.
I would have quite liked to be involved in that sweet research, but
Indeed.
nevertheless.
It was great fun.
Yeah, good decision. And now you invest a fortune in jelly babies every year.
And what is also funny about it, I was banned from eating them. It's in the company manual. That I'm not allowed to eat the jelly babies, partly because had I been allowed to eat them over the last 15 years, I would probably resemble one.
Okay, now as you know, I'm a copywriter. So what role do you see copy playing in marketing communications?
Okay, so copy is a fundamental part of communication for obvious reasons. It enables and engages the consumer in a very particular way. It allows you to transfer intellectually both the emotional and the rational side of a value proposition of a business. So it's key that you get your copy right, that it's designed in such a way that it guides people towards the value proposition of that particular communication. Actually, all right, a picture will tell 1,000 words, but there are some fallacies about the fact that verbal communication is not as powerful as visual. It is nonsense. The piece of research on which that is founded was fundamentally flawed. Even the person who created the research has admitted to that. And actually text and helping people understand through the written word what it is they're buying, what the journey is they're on, is completely fundamental. So I'm a big supporter of copy working hard and well.
Very happy to hear that. So what goes into a good brief, do you think?
So a good brief, I think, it depends who the brief is for, but if you're briefing a designer or somebody coming up for an idea with you, you've got to give them everything they need to create the context for looking at the outside environment and finding the right kind of idea that helps. So our briefs are very clear. They state why it is you're advertising or you're producing the piece of marketing communication in the first place, what the problem is that you're trying to address, and indeed, if you were to get that sorted, what would be the opportunity as a result of it. Now, just providing that context alone changes the nature of the brief. We then identify where exactly on the brand bucket the brief sits. You can't be in more than one place at any one time. So that's really helpful for creatives to understand precisely where the recipient of that piece of communication is in their decision-making process, because ultimately you can't be everything to everybody. But then what you need to cover off is what the psychographic profile is of your ideal prospect. How do they think? How do they feel? What are their challenges? How your piece of communication has helped them address some of those things. And then a single thought, which may or may not be the most potent way of telling this particular story you want to tell, but supported with lots of facts and benefits and various things. And then finally, the tone of the communication. If you've got a strong brand property, if you've got a strong style to your business, that should be in the brief, so that actually the creative people meet that style and meet that objective.
Now, you and I are co-presidents currently of the Southeast region of the Professional Speaking Association. What role does speaking play in your business?
Okay, so I'm very fortunate, having had a long career, having run a top London advertising agency. It became apparent in 2010 that the model that I was working was an outdated model. The concept of having large agency space in central London for clients to come to was just not the way to do things. It had been a great way of attracting clients to the agency. I went out on my own in 2010 and used the freelance community, the collaborative community that we created within the agency, maintained that and used that to run the agency from where we're speaking from now, which is my purpose-built home office. To generate business, what you're trying to do is you're trying to engage relevant people who fit your ideal psychographic profile, your ideal prospect, in a way where you form a relationship. If you're a service provider, if you're selling yourself as part of your business, actually what people want to do is they want to see you. Do you know what? There is no better way than getting up on stage in front of a room of potential prospects, potential customers, and showing your values through a speech or through an opinion or through a particular approach to a problem they might be confronting. Because what that results in is a relationship, albeit from the stage to the audience. So what's happened since 2010 is I've absolutely integrated speaking into my business model. So it is very much how I bring people into their understanding of the way Brand Bucket works and could work for their business. Inevitably, they go, how do we do this? How do we get help? And I go, holy me. And there you go. That's how you get business. So speaking is a fundamental part of my marketing mix.
Now, researching for this interview, I discovered something about you that I didn't know before. So tell us about the Guild of Entrepreneurs.
Okay, so I'm what's called a founding freeman of the Guild of Entrepreneurs. The Guild of Entrepreneurs is the newest guild in the United Kingdom. The oldest is over 900 years old. And the guilds were formed to enable similar tradespeople to work together for the community to help people have a better understanding of the kind of business they were in, whether they were the mercers and the wine trade or the furriers or whatever, going back some distance. What's fascinating about that is the founder of our Guild of Entrepreneurs, it dawned on him that all of these people in their day would have been entrepreneurs, but there was no guild for entrepreneurs. So 3 years ago, he began the journey of putting together a guild which brings together people who have started businesses. I've sat on the board of over 37 businesses, so that's how I got to qualify, as well as starting my own businesses. And what we do is we spend time working with the local community, helping young entrepreneurs, providing them with advice. We have fancy dinners, we network, we learn from each other, and we gift that back to the community in the City of London.
And if you had one tip for an aspiring entrepreneur, what would it be?
Well, I think there are many tips that I have. I think the first thing you should do is you should ensure you absolutely are clear on your story. Inevitably, what I find with businesses is they don't actually have a good story. And when I mean a story, I mean a value proposition. They haven't spent any time really thinking about what value they're bringing to the market that they've chosen to be in. They often are simply taking a skill that they're good at and entering into a market where potentially there are lots of other competitors. They need to spend much more time really deciding what it is they're going to be selling into the market. There is a second tip, because I don't think you can have just one tip. The second tip is decide how much money they want to make. Often, if you're building a business, you should have as your focal point what that business is going to yield at some point in the future. I choose 5 years. My number is 5.97 million. I'm building a machine that will yield 5.97 million, and that's what all my energy is about as a business owner.
You work backwards from that big number.
I do work backwards from the big number, yes.
Can you give us an example of a company with a value proposition that you rate?
So there are lots. The thing that's really characterising new brands entering into the market is they are almost entirely reliant on their value propositions. So today we're seeing brands like Uber. So Uber, how many mini cabs do Uber own?
They don't own any.
They don't own any at all. Okay. What about Airbnb, another new entry to the travel market?
They don't own any property.
No properties at all. Amazon, how many books do they write and print themselves?
They don't do any books.
They don't do any books. So eBay, how many products do they actually manufacture?
Not a single one.
Not a single one. So what we are seeing now is actually they're all pure value propositions. They're all what I'm now calling how brands. They're all brands that have really understood that people want to buy a particular way of getting a product or service. And what they're providing now is something, to be fair, this has always been true. Supermarkets did it for the food retailers. I really like Zappos in America.
The shoe company.
The shoe company. Mm-hmm. They have a culture book. They have really celebrated their value proposition. They do some fantastic things in their recruitment process that are about their value proposition. I don't know if you know, but they take on people for a week and they train them up. And at the end of the week, they offer anybody $5,000 to leave. Now, $5,000 wow. If you're in your 21, they say, wow, exactly. If you're young and somebody offers you $5,000 for a week's worth of work, that's kind of a significant amount of money. It might be there. And the people who take it, they just are so grateful that they don't have in their culture.
And what percentage then stay?
Do you know what? I don't know. So it's a great question. But I think I understood that most people don't take the money.
Okay.
But I think it's absolutely a pure representation of the value
novel approach, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great expression of the value proposition. You're going to work for us because you love working for us. You know, we hear stories about Google, we hear stories about Apple, that people love working for those sorts of brands, because I think they really understood their value propositions.
And there's a value match between them and their employees.
Absolutely, and therefore a value match between their customers as well.
Okay.
So,
now I know you're always up to new and exciting things, and I mentioned the Academy at the beginning. What is that all about, and what else is new for the Brand Bucket?
Okay, so my job now, my career is about getting the Brand Bucket methodology into the hands of every single business owner in the world. And that's an ambitious goal. I appreciate that, but it gets me out of bed every morning and it prevents me going back to bed in the evening. So the great thing about the modern era that we live in is that technology has allowed us to decant our own IP, our own skill sets into other means. The e-Academy is something I've been working on for 2 years. And in fact, I came to an agreement with a company called World Academy. And now if you go to www.worldacademy.tv, you'll find that I am the Dean of Marketing. What that actually means is there is now a subscription platform where you can view over 100 videos of me tackling various aspects of marketing, and associated with those videos is then a written learning module to enable you to implement what I'm saying in the videos. Now, I mentioned earlier that my number is 5.97 million. Well, you'll be shocked to know that subscription yields me £5.97 a month. So now I have a business plan which is I need 1 million monthly subscribers. Mm-hmm. Now, when I originally did the plan 2 years ago, people subscribed on average 9 months and then they cancelled it. That has dropped to 3 months. So where my plan was only to maybe get 100,000 odd so businesses to subscribe for 9 months, I now have to get 330,000 businesses subscribing for 3 months each. That would be 1 million subscribers. 1 million times 5.97 is 5.97 million. Now, actually, business is that simple. If you start with your number, it allows you to build that thing. So that was the first thing. What's interesting, having spent 2 years building this platform, and I'm told that people are enjoying it, is then you've got to get subscribers, which again is another challenge. And part of that development is I'm working on launching a business radio station, which we hope to launch in November. The first show is planned to go out on November the 2nd. I've had some training on working the desk, and we're working on content. And that particular radio station will be called London City YDN, which is part of Your Digital Network, a community-based digital network operating throughout London. And my particular show will be targeting the London City area to help young creative entrepreneurs. And they have a real challenge. They've got a passion for music or art or fashion or design or whatever, but they don't really know how to run a business. They need to run a business in order to have a passion for music, art, etc. So the show will be purposed to teach people how to start a business, what you should know about, what you should run, what you should learn, and you'll be amazed to know that it'll include how you derive your one number, how you develop your value propositions, all that sort of thing. And we'll run that through the show. There'll be a series of interviews, news, tips, all those sorts of things, and music. It'll be blended with music as well, and it's been great fun putting a music list together. So
fascinating stuff. So to end, how did you arrive at your 5.97 million number?
Okay, so what I recommend people do is you project yourself forward 5 years, and then you take that as a stake in the ground and imagine what the rest of your life will look like, and you then cost that life. So my 5.97 million, I put in there that I would have no mortgage, that I would live another 20 or so years, that I would travel a certain amount in the year. I would have 3 weddings. I'm blessed with 3 daughters, so I would have to fund those and all those sorts of things. So you literally throw everything that you've got into the pot, and rather scarily you end up with a number that looks like 5.97 million. The trouble is, as a business owner, you have no other way of getting the money apart from your business. So that becomes quite a guiding light. So that's how I did it.
I wish you every success with the next 20 or more years
yes,
achieving your big number.
Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Thank you very much.